The rain pelted the empty streets of downtown Seattle, a relentless drizzle that blurred the neon glow of the Urban Brew Cafe's sign into a hazy halo. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Thursday, and the city had long since tucked itself into bed, leaving only the hum of the espresso machine and the faint crackle of a lo-fi playlist to keep Lila Ramirez company. Her hands, calloused from years of steaming milk and scrubbing counters, moved mechanically, wiping down the polished oak bar for the third time that night. The scent of roasted coffee clung to her worn apron, a comforting constant in a life that felt like it was always teetering on the edge. Leela glanced at the clock, her stomach twisting. She was halfway through a double shift, her second this week, because rent was due in 5 days, and Noah's school supplies weren't getting any cheaper. At 32, she carried the weight of single motherhood like a backpack that grew heavier. Each day, her husband, Diego, had been gone 3 years now, a car accident that stole his laughter and left her with a 7-year-old son who asked questions she couldn't always answer. Tonight, her usual babysitter, Mrs. Alvarez, had called in sick with the flu, and with no one else to watch Noah, Leela had made a choice she'd sworn she'd never make. She brought him to work. "No. Sweetheart, you okay back there?" she whispered, crouching to peer behind the pastry display case. The glass shelves, usually brimming with croissants and muffins, were nearly empty this late, giving Noah just enough space to carve out a makeshift hideout. He'd stacked napkins into wobbly towers and draped her old sweater over a crate to form a fort. His flashlight cast a soft glow, illuminating his messy dark curls and the wide brown eyes that reminded her so much of Diego eyes that saw too much for a boy his age. "I'm good, Mom," Noah replied, his voice muffled as he turned a page in his dog-eared copy of The Little Prince. "I'm at the part where he meets the fox. It's about taming things, making them yours by caring." He looked up, his expression serious. "Mom, do you think coffee beans get tamed when you brew them?" Leela forced a smile, though her chest ached. Noah's mind was a constellation of questions, always reaching for meaning in the smallest things. "Maybe they do, buddy. But remember the rules. Stay quiet, read your book, and pretend I'm invisible." Noah finished, nodding solemnly. "Got it?" He adjusted his pajamas, blue ones with tiny rocket ships, and returned to his book, the flashlight bobbing with his movements. Leela straightened, her heart hammering. Bringing Noah here was a risk. Urban Brew was a 24-hour chain, but the overnight shift was for inventory and cleaning, not childcare. If her manager caught wind, she could lose this job, the only thing keeping their tiny apartment in Rainier Valley, and Noah's school fees paid. She pushed the thought away, focusing on the rhythm of her tasks. Restock sugar packets, check the milk fridge, mop the floor. The cafe door chimed, a sharp sound that sliced through the quiet. Lila's breath caught. No one came in this late night. Delivery drivers, not even the insomniac regulars who nursed black coffee until dawn. Her hands froze on the rag as she turned, praying it was just a lost tourist. It wasn't. Stepping through the door was Elena Vasquez, the 32-year-old founder and CEO of Urban Brew. Even in the dim light, she was unmistakable. A tailored navy trench coat over a silk blouse. Her black hair pulled into a sleek ponytail that gleamed under the fluorescent bulbs. Her tablet glowed in her hand, casting sharp shadows across her angular face. Leela had seen her in industry magazines, self-made daughter of Mexican immigrants who turned one corner cafe into a 50-location empire across the West Coast in under a decade. Employees whispered about her, the caffeine queen, brilliant but unrelenting, her life a blur of meetings and expansion plans. Ramirez, Elena said, her eyes flicking to Lila's name tag. Her voice was crisp, like the first sip of espresso, carrying the faint trace of her heritage in its cadence. "I wasn't expecting anyone on the overnight shift. Inventory audits tomorrow, isn't it?" Lila's mouth went dry. She stepped forward, subtly angling her body to block the view of the pastry case. "Yes, ma'am. Just finishing up some cleaning." running a bit behind tonight. Her mind raced health insurance, Noah's math tutor, the electric bill all hanging by the thread of this job. Elena's gaze, sharp as a barista's knife, swept the room. The cafe was small but meticulously designed, exposed brick walls, reclaimed wood tables, chalkboard menus with hand-drawn stars. Her eyes lingered on the shadows behind the counter. Behind schedule, she repeated, stepping closer. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor, each sound a countdown to disaster. And yet I heard voices, talking about taming foxes. Lila's heart sank. She opened her mouth to lie. Maybe she'd been humming, or talking to herself to stay awake, but before she could, a small cough echoed from Noah's hiding spot. His head popped up, curls bouncing. His book clutched against his chest like Achilles. "Sorry, Mom," he whispered, his eyes wide with guilt. "It was an accident." Elena's expression shifted, not to anger but to something unreadable, curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. She set her tablet on the counter and knelt, her coat pooling around her like spilled ink. "Come out," she said, her voice softer, now almost gentle. "I won't bite." Lila moved to protest, but Elena raised a hand, silencing her. Noah hesitated, then emerged. His rocket ship pajamas a stark contrast to the cafe's polished aesthetic. He stood clutching the little prince, his flashlight dangling from one hand. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely audible. "The coffee smell made me sneeze. Mom said I had to be invisible, but I messed up." For a moment, the only sounds were the rain outside and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Elena studied Noah, her ice blue eyes softening. Lila braced for the reprimand, the call to HR, the end of everything. Instead, Elena sat on a stool, gesturing for Noah to join her. "What's that book about?" she asked, as if finding a child in her cafe at midnight was the most normal thing in the world. Noah's fear melted into enthusiasm. "It's about a boy from a star who travels to planets and meets grown-ups who don't understand. Important stuff like love and stars. The fox teaches him about taming, how you make invisible bonds by caring." He paused, tilting his head. "Do you like stars, Ms. Vasquez?" Lila watched, stunned, as Elena's lips curved into a smile, a rare crack in her polished armor. "I used to," she said quietly. "My mother read me that book when I was your age." She pulled out her tablet, opening an astronomy app. Here, real-time constellations, like the ones the little prince might see, for the next 20 minutes. Lila stood frozen as Noah showed off what he'd learned from library books. Orion's belt, the Big Dipper, questions about black holes. Elena guided him, her voice patient despite the dark circles under her eyes. Lila noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twitched toward her phone as if expecting another crisis. This wasn't the caffeine queen of legend. This was a woman who hadn't slept in days. "Noah's bright," Elena said to Lila, her voice low while Noah sketched a star map on a napkin. "Curious, empathetic. Have you considered STEM programs for him?" Lila's cheeks burned with shame and pride. "We get by, ma'am. Those programs cost more than I make in tips." Elena nodded, her gaze distant. "My mother used to say curiosity shouldn't be a luxury." She stood, scribbling her number on a napkin. "If childcare falls through again, call me. I'm here most nights anyway." She looked at Noah, who waved. "Thanks for the stars, Miss Elena. The prince would like you see the invisible stuff." As they left, Elena stood silhouetted against the rain-streaked window, her tablet forgotten on the counter. Lila clutched the napkin, sensing their lives had just shifted in ways she couldn't yet grasp. The Urban Brew Café was quiet at 1:12 a.m., save for the soft patter of rain against the windows and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine cooling down. Lila Ramirez moved through her tasks with practiced efficiency, restocking sugar packets and wiping down tables, but her mind was elsewhere. The napkin with Elena Vasquez's phone number sat tucked in her apron pocket, its weight heavier than it should have been. 3 nights had passed since the CEO's unexpected kindness, and Leela still couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter had been a fluke, a moment of vulnerability from a woman who, by all accounts, lived for profit margins and expansion plans. Behind the pastry display, Noah was engrossed in his fortress of napkins, his flashlight casting golden beams across the pages of The Little Prince. His small frame was curled up in Lila's old sweater, the one Diego used to wear when he'd help her study for her barista certification. Noah's resemblance to his father was uncanny tonight, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his lips moved silently as he read. Lila's throat tightened. At 7.5, Noah carried a curiosity that both anchored her and broke her heart, reminding her of dreams they'd once shared as a family. Daddy would have liked this part, Noah said suddenly, his voice soft but clear. The fox says you're responsible forever for what you've tamed. Like how you take care of me, Mom. He looked up, his brown eyes catching the dim cafe light. Do you think Miss Elena tames things? Leela paused, rag in hand. Maybe. She tames businesses, sweetheart. Running all these cafes is a big job. She didn't know how to explain Elena Vasquez, the caffeine queen whose reputation for ruthless efficiency clashed with the woman who'd knelt on the floor to talk stars with a child. The door chimed, and Lila's heart skipped. Elena stepped inside, shaking rain from her black umbrella. Tonight, she wore a tailored blazer over jeans, her hair still in its signature ponytail but slightly frayed, as if the storm had caught her off guard. Her tablet was tucked under her arm, its screen glowing with graphs Leela couldn't decipher. Ramirez, Elena said, her voice less sharp than before, though still carrying that commanding edge. Still behind schedule? No, ma'am. Leela replied, straightening. Just keeping up with the overnight prep. She glanced at Noah's hideout, praying he'd stay quiet, but Noah, sensing the visitor, poked his head out, clutching his book. Miss Elena, I'm reading about the fox again. He's teaching the prince about invisible bonds. Elena's expression softened, the lines of exhaustion around her eyes easing. She set her umbrella by the door and approached, her heels muted against the hardwood. Invisible bonds, huh? She sat on a stool near the counter, gesturing for Noah to join her. Tell me more. Leela watched stunned as Noah scrambled up, his pajamas rumpled but his enthusiasm undimmed. It's like how you care about someone, and that makes them special. Like stars, you don't see the light until you really look. He opened his book, pointing to a dog-eared page. The fox says, what is essential is invisible to the eye. Do you believe that? Elena's fingers hesitated over her tablet, as if Noah's words had struck a nerve. My mother used to read me that book, she said quietly. She said the same thing about seeing what matters. Her voice caught, and she cleared her throat, pulling up an astronomy app. Here, let's find some stars. This shows constellations in real time. For 20 minutes, the cafe transformed into a small universe. Noah traced Orion's belt on the tablet, asking why stars die and if they feel lonely out there. Elena answered patiently, her usual sharpness replaced by a warmth Leela hadn't expected. She showed Noah how to code a simple star pattern using a beginner's app, her fingers guiding his over the screen. Leela noticed the dark circles under Elena's eyes, the way her shoulders slumped when she thought no one was watching. This was a woman who carried an empire but seemed starved for connection. He's bright, Elena murmured to Leela as Noah sketched a constellation on a napkin. Curious, empathetic, his mind makes connections most adults miss. Have you considered STEM programs for him? There's one at the Science Center, scholarships available. Lila's cheeks flushed with a mix of pride and defensiveness. We're managing, Ms. Vasquez. Those programs cost more than I make in a month, even with tips. She hated the edge in her voice, but couldn't help it. Kindness from someone like Elena felt like a spotlight on her struggles. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on Noah. My mother worked 2 jobs when I was his age. She'd bring me to her night shifts at a diner, hide me in the back with books. I got into a science camp because a teacher saw potential and paid my way. She paused, her voice barely above a whisper. She died when I was 8, heart attack. I still wonder what she'd think of all this. She gestured vaguely at the cafe, her empire. Noah looked up, his eyes solemn. My dad died when I was 4, car accident. Mom says he's watching from the stars, but I miss him anyway. He reached out, patting Elena's hand with the unself-conscious ease of a child. Maybe your mom's up there too, cheering for you. The air thickened with shared grief. Lila's chest ached, remembering Diego's laugh, his dreams of taking Noah to see the Milky Way. Elena's eyes glistened, but she didn't pull away from Noah's touch. Her phone buzzed, a supply chain alert, but she silenced it. You're a wise one, Noah, she said, her voice soft. The little prince would be proud. She stood, scribbling on another napkin. My direct line again. If childcare falls through, call me. I'm here most nights, drowning in spreadsheets. She looked at Noah, who was back to sketching stars. This place could use some of your light after hours. As they packed up, Noah handed Elena his napkin, drawing a starry sky linking 3 figures. Him, Lila, and a woman with a ponytail. For you, he said, so you don't forget the invisible stuff. Elena clutched the napkin, her composure cracking just enough to reveal a flicker of longing. She stood by the window as they left, silhouetted against the rain, looking more alone than a woman of her success should. Lila tucked Noah into her jacket, the napkin with Elena's number burning in her pocket. Something had shifted tonight, not just a moment of kindness, but the beginning of a thread, delicate and invisible, weaving them together in ways she couldn't yet understand. The Urban Brew Café glowed faintly under Seattle's midnight drizzle, its neon sign casting a soft halo across the wet pavement. It was just past 1:00 a.m. on a Monday, and Lila Ramirez moved through the familiar rhythm of her overnight shift, refilling coffee filters, scrubbing the espresso machine's steam wand, checking the inventory list pinned to the corkboard. Her hands worked on autopilot, but her mind was a tangle of worry and wonder. The napkin with Elena Vasquez's phone number, now creased from being carried in her apron pocket, felt like a talisman, proof that their first encounter wasn't a dream. 3 nights ago, the CEO of Urban Brew had knelt on the cafe floor to talk stars with Noah, her 7-year-old son, and offered a lifeline Lila hadn't dared expect. Behind the counter, Noah was tucked into his makeshift fort, a nest of napkins, and Lila's old sweater, his flashlight illuminating the pages of The Little Prince. His rocket ship pajamas were slightly too small now, a reminder of how fast he was growing and how little Lila could afford to keep up. Mom, he called softly, the prince says the stars laugh. Do you think Dad's star is laughing tonight? His brown eyes, so like Diego's, sparkled with a mix of curiosity and longing. Lila's heart clenched. I bet it is, sweetheart. Your dad always laughed at the best parts. She forced a smile, pushing back memories of Diego reading to Noah under a blanket fort, promising they'd camp under real stars someday. That was before the accident, before their world shrank to this tiny apartment and endless shifts. Keep reading, okay? Stay quiet. Noah nodded, returning to his book. Lila's phone buzzed in her pocket, and her breath caught as she saw the sender. Evie, the message was brief. Late inventory tonight. Noah, welcome in the back office, books and gains set up. Evie. Lila stared, her pulse quickening. Her manager, Rosa, had shrugged when Lila asked about it earlier. Got an email from corporate. You're cleared to bring the kid. Must have a guardian angel. Ramirez. The back office, a cramped room usually stuffed with supply boxes and old ledgers, was transformed when Lila led Noah inside. A small table held a stack of astronomy books, a puzzle of the Milky Way, and a tablet loaded with educational apps. A note in Elena's precise handwriting read, "Explore the stars." Noah's eyes lit up. Mom, look, it's like a spaceship. Library. He dove into a book about constellations, chattering about the fox taming the prince. Ms. Elena remembered, I like stars. That's nice, right? Yeah, it's nice, Lila said, her voice tight. Nice didn't cover it. Why was Elena Vasquez, the caffeine queen who'd built a 50 cafe empire, going out of her way for a barista and her son? Leela had Googled her after their first meeting, articles about her meteoric rise, her immigrant parents' sacrifice, her reputation for outmaneuvering competitors. Nothing suggested she'd be the type to create a children's library in a corporate office. Through the one-way glass separating the office from the main cafe, Leela glimpsed Elena in a strategy meeting. She stood before a whiteboard, her tailored blazer sharp against the dim light, addressing three executives in suits. Her voice carried faintly, "Automation cuts costs. But our baristas are the soul of urban brew. We lose them. We lose loyalty." The execs pushed back, their tones clipped. "Profit margins don't care about soul, Elena. Wellness programs are bleeding us dry." Lila's stomach churned. She recognized the tension rumors had swirled among staff about budget cuts, maybe even layoffs. She focused on mopping, but her eyes kept drifting to the meeting. Elena's hands trembled slightly as he pointed to a graph, her composure fraying. The meeting ended abruptly, the executives storming out, one muttering, "Her bleeding heart idealism will tank this chain." Elena emerged minutes later, her face pale, and knocked softly on the office door. "Miss Elena," Noah exclaimed, looking up from his puzzle. "I finished Orion, want to check it." Elena smiled, a weary but genuine curve of her lips, and sat beside him. "Let's see, star expert." For half an hour, she reviewed his work, teaching him shortcuts to map constellations, her voice softening with each question he asked. Noah shared stories of school, his dream of becoming an astronaut or a storyteller like the prince, connecting stars to hearts. Lila watched, her red forgotten. Elena's polished exterior melted as she laughed at Noah's tale of a class project where he'd built a model rocket from cardboard. "My dad read me stories too," Elena said suddenly, her voice low. "Before he decided business was all that mattered. He died when I was 12, heart attack." At his desk, her eyes glistened. Noah, with a child's intuition, patted her hand. "Grown-ups get scared of big feelings sometimes. The prince says taming means you're responsible for what you love." Elena's breath hitched, and she looked away, her fingers tightening around the tablet. "You're right, Noah. My mom used to say something similar before she passed when I was 8. The air grew heavy with shared loss. Lila's chest ached, remembering Diego's warmth, his promises of a brighter future. She wanted to say something, but words felt inadequate. Elena stood, smoothing her blazer. "There's a STEM camp at the Science Center," she said to Lila. "Scholarships for gifted kids." Noah's unnatural, his curiosity, his empathy. "Dr. Kinder owes me a favor." Lila's pride warred with hope. "Why are you doing this, Ms. Vasquez?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Elena met her gaze. "Because wonder shouldn't be a luxury, and because you to remind me of who I was before all this." She gestured at the cafe, her empire. Noah handed her a new drawing, a starry sky with 3 figures linked by glowing threads. "For you," he said, "so you don't forget the fox's lesson." Elena clutched the drawing, her composure cracking. As they left, she stood by the window, rain streaking the glass, looking like a woman who built a kingdom but lost her way. Leela tucked Noah into her jacket, the note and drawing burning in her mind. Invisible bonds were forming, delicate but strong, and she wondered what they'd mean for their fractured lives. Thunder rumbled over Seattle, shaking the windows of the Urban Brew Café as Leila Ramirez swept the floor at 12:37 a.m. The storm outside mirrored the unease in her chest. It was a Tuesday night, and the café was a cocoon of warmth against the rain-lashed streets, its neon sign flickering like a heartbeat. Lila's hands gripped the broom tightly, her thoughts swirling around the past week. Elena Vasquez's unexpected kindness setting up a haven for Noah in the back office, offering a STEM camp scholarship had cracked open a door Leela hadn't dared hope for. Yet, the napkin with Elena's number, now worn soft in her pocket, felt like a fragile promise. one that could unravel if the rumors of corporate cuts proved true. Noah sat in the back office, his flashlight casting a soft glow over his copy of The Little Prince. His rocket ship pajamas were tucked into Lila's old sweater, and he hummed softly, sketching constellations on a napkin. "Mom," he called, "the prince says grown-ups argue about numbers, but forget the stars. Why do they do that?" His brown eyes, so like Diego's, held a question too big for his 7 years. Lila forced a smile. "Sometimes grown-ups lose sight of what's important, sweetheart. They get caught up in work." She didn't mention the whispers she'd overheard from coworkers. Budget cuts, automation replacing baristas, Elena fighting a losing battle against her executives. Leela glanced at the one-way glass separating the office from the main cafe, where Elena stood before a whiteboard, her tailored black suit sharp against the dim light. 3 executives faced her, their voices rising in a heated strategy meeting. "Employee wellness programs are a luxury we can't afford," one exec, a gray-haired man named Victor, snapped. "Automation boosts margins. Your community first. Vision is bleeding us dry." Elena's voice cut back, steady but strained. "Urban Brew thrives on people, not machines. Cut our staff's benefits, and you cut our soul." Lila's stomach churned. She'd felt the impact of Elena's policies. Better health insurance, a small daycare subsidy that let Noah stay in school. Losing those could break them. Noah looked up, sensing her tension. "Is Ms. Elena in trouble?" "Mom," Lila hesitated. "Sometimes grown-ups disagree about important things. Just focus on your book, okay?" Noah nodded but kept watching the glass, his brow furrowed. The meeting grew louder. Voices spilling into the cafe. "Motion to terminate the wellness initiatives and redirect funds to shareholder dividends," Victor declared. Lila froze, broom in hand. Through the glass, she saw Elena's shoulders stiffen, her hands gripping the whiteboard marker like a lifeline. The executives raised their hands, unanimous. "Motion carried," Victor said smugly. "Now about your leadership." Elena's voice sliced through. "If you want my resignation, say it. Don't hide behind budgets." The room fell silent, and Lila held her breath, feeling the weight of Elena's defiance. Then the lights flickered and died, plunging the cafe into darkness. Emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in a red glow. Noah's voice broke the silence, small and scared. "Mom, it's okay, sweetheart. Just the storm," Lila said, hurrying to the office. But Noah was already moving, drawn by the shouting he'd heard through the glass. "Noah, wait," Lila called, but he pushed open the meeting room door, clutching his book like a shield. The executives turned, stunned, as a 7-year-old in pajamas stood in their corporate battlefield. Victor's face reddened. "Who's this? A PR stunt?" Elena stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "He's with me, Noah. It's okay. The lights will be back soon." Noah's eyes darted across the room, taking in the scattered papers, drafts of profits, employee satisfaction charts. "You're all mad at Ms. Elena because she wants to help people," he said, his voice trembling but clear. "My mom says she made it so we have good insurance. That's not bad, right?" "It's complicated," kid and executive started, but Noah tilted his head, undeterred. "Is it? The prince says grown-ups make things complicated, but it's simple. Helping people makes them happy, like stars lighting up." He pointed to a chart. "This line goes up. Doesn't that mean people like working here?" Elena's lips twitched. A flicker of a smile. "Yes, Noah, it does." The executives shifted uncomfortably, one muttering about dividends. Noah frowned. "What's a dividend?" "Money for people who don't even work here." Lila reached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Vasquez." "No," Elena interrupted, her gaze sweeping the room. "Let him stay. He's who this affects, a child of an employee, the future we're building." She turned to the executives. "Can you look him in the eye and say his mother's healthcare matters less than your profits?" Victor blustered. "This is inappropriate," but another executive, a woman with silver hair, cleared her throat. "Maybe we table the leadership vote, revisit the budget next quarter." The others nodded, suddenly outnumbered. Victor stormed out, muttering about shareholders. When the room cleared, Elena sank into a chair, her face pale. "Thank you, Noah," she whispered. "You said what I've been trying to for months." Noah shrugged. "I just told the truth. The prince says the truth is simple, even when grown-ups make it hard." Leela found her voice. "Noah, you can't barge into meetings like that." Elena shook her head. "He saved me." They were ready to call for my head. She looked at Noah, wonder in her eyes. "How did you know what to say?" "They reminded me of kids at school who won't share," Noah said. "You just remind them sharing makes everyone happier." Elena laughed, a raw, genuine sound that echoed in the quiet cafe. Over coffee on her, she confessed her loneliness, orphaned, young, building an empire to fill the void left by her parents. Leela shared her own grief, Diego's loss still a raw wound. They ended up at a diner, Noah chattering about stars, forging bonds stronger than any storm. The Urban Brew Café was a fortress of light against the Seattle storm at 2:03 a.m., its neon sign pulsing through sheets of rain. Leila Ramirez stood behind the counter, her hands trembling as she sorted coffee filters, her mind reeling from Elena Vasquez's desperate call an hour ago. "They're forcing me out. I need friends, real ones." Leela had bundled Noah into his raincoat, driven through the downpour, and now stood in the cafe's back office, where chaos reigned. Papers littered the floor, budgets, profit projections, resignation drafts, each a piece of Elena's crumbling empire. Noah, in his rocket ship pajamas, clutched the little prince, his eyes wide with concern. "Mom, is Elena okay?" Leela knelt beside him, smoothing his curls. "She's fighting a big battle, sweetheart." Like the prince with his bababs, her voice wavered. The past weeks had woven them into Elena's orbit, late-night talks, Noah's starry drawings, shared grief over lost loved ones. Yet, Leela felt the weight of their fragile bond. If Elena lost Urban Brew, what would become of the scholarships, the healthcare, the hope she'd sparked? Elena emerged from the meeting room, her tailored blazer rumpled, her ponytail fraying, her eyes, usually sharp as espresso, were red-rimmed, her tablet discarded on a chair. "They're voting me out," she said, her voice hollow. "Victor's got the board convinced I'm too soft, to focused on people over profits." She sank onto a stool, head in her hands. "I built this from nothing, Leela, for my parents, and it's slipping away." Noah stepped forward, his book tucked under his arm. "The prince says you have to pull out baobabs before they grow too big. Maybe there's a secret star to help you fight." Elena managed a faint smile. "You're my secret star, Noah. But this might be too big even for you." Lila's heart ached, seeing Elena's vulnerability mirror her own struggles after Diego's death. She wanted to help but felt powerless until Noah wandered to a shelf, his flashlight catching a dusty ledger. "This smells like secrets," he said, tugging it down. As he opened it, a sealed envelope fell out, addressed to Elena in elegant script. Leela froze. "Noah, that's not ours." Elena took the envelope, her hands shaking. "This is my mother's handwriting." She tore it open, revealing a letter and a faded document. Her voice trembled as she read aloud. "Elena, your father built for power, but I saved these shares for your heart. Use them to protect what matters, people, not profits." The document listed controlling shares of Urban Brew, hidden by her mother to preserve the company's soul. Elena's eyes widened, a spark reigniting. She knew I'd need this. She clutched the letter, then Noah's drawing from days ago, 3 figures linked by starry threads. "You found this, Noah? You're my fox, showing me what's essential." Lila watched, stunned, as Elena rallied. By dawn, she'd called an emergency board meeting. Leela and Noah stayed. Noah sketching in the office, while Leela brewed coffee, her hands steadier now. Through the glass, Elena faced the board, her voice steady. "Urban Brew is about connections, not just profits. This is my mother's legacy and mine." She presented the shares, her mother's letter, and Noah's drawing. "A child reminded me why we exist." "Can you argue with that?" Victor scoffed. But others hesitated, moved by the letter's plea and Noah's innocent wisdom. The vote shifted. Eleanor retained control. She announced reforms: higher wages, family programs, no automation cuts. The room erupted in murmurs, but her resolve held. Months later, Urban Brew thrived, headlines praised, record sales and top employee ratings. Leela, now manager, trained new hires, her confidence blooming. Noah excelled at STEM camp, his starry dreams soaring. Elena moved to a loft nearby, and Sunday stargazing became their ritual. Leela, Noah, and Elena sprawled on a park blanket, tracing constellations. One evening, under a clear sky, Noah grinned. "Mom, are you marrying Miss Elena?" Leela laughed, blushing as Elena squeezed her hand. Months later, buzz echoed under city lights. "You tamed our stars," Elena whispered to Leela. Noah beamed, holding his book. The prince knew invisible bonds last forever. Their family, forged in late nights and shared loss, shone brighter than any storm, a constellation of love and hope.